Hello, welcome back to another video. It's Lydia here. Today we're going to be doing an exciting video, so I'm going to be showing you another retro console collection. This time it's going to be the Sega Saturn, so really exciting to show you this one. I haven't got a massive collection for this one, and just as a disclaimer, this is Ant's collection, so when we moved in together we combined video game collections, so I haven't had a chance to play a lot of the Sega Saturn games, but I'm going to be playing these for the first time for this video. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you the console and then I'll go through a few of the games too. Now, we will start off with the very most important thing first, the console itself. So, here it is. It's pretty chunky. There's not a huge amount of different features to it. It's kind of just very boxy, but I quite like that. I think some older consoles can look a bit too extra, let's put it that way. But yeah, it's got quite a nice sleek design. Got the two controller ports there at the front. Obviously it flips up. What's it got in there at the moment? Sega Ages. And then you've got the memory card behind. As you can see, it's in pretty good condition. And yeah, looks nice. It's got a nice bit of weight to it as well, because some of the older consoles, like the PlayStation 1, they feel very light, but this one's nice and hefty. So yeah, there it is. Next up, the second most important part is obviously the games. So, they're a bit too much for me to show you everything in one pile. But yeah, it's got a nice few games here, so I'll show you them in order. So we've got World Cup Golf, we've got Virtua Fighter 2, Virtua Fighter 1, we've got Valora Valley Golf, Sega World Cup Soccer, Sega Touring Car Championship, Sega Rally Championship, Sega Ages Volume 1, Pebble Beach Golf Links. As you can tell, Ant really likes golf. Don't know what might have given you that impression, but yeah. Panzer Dragoon Saga. Now I know the Panzer Dragoon games are worth quite a bit now, and yeah, they're in really good condition, but I will show you in more detail later. I've got Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2, Olympic Soccer, Nights into Dreams, which I know is another classic and an exclusive for the Saturn. Got Manx Superbike TT, The Mansion of Hidden Souls. This one looks very horror-y and creepy and probably quite terrible. Last Bronx, Hardcore 4x4, Daytona USA, Dark Saviour, Clockwork Knight, and last but not least, Actual Golf. So since I've not really played on the Sega Saturn that much and it is a new collection for me, I thought I'd pick out 4 games that I'm going to play for you and show you a bit of gameplay and then talk a little bit about how I feel about them and yeah, which one's my favourite, how I feel about the Sega Saturn in general as well. I have played 1 or 2 games. I think I've played Virtua Fighter on it before, and yeah, I really love Virtua Fighter. It's such a great fighting game, but obviously the older games do look very clunky, and obviously because it was so new in the 3D world, some of them are a bit boxy and a bit dated, let's put it that way. But I do think Sega at that point in time was really innovative and they did some really cool stuff. So you've got to keep in mind the age and also the time that it came out in. And I do think the Saturn was really good for its time. So I'll show you the games that I've decided to pick out to play. So I'm going to be showing some Sega Rally and Panzer Dragoon, Nights into Dreams, and the very first Virtua Fighter. So I'll show you how all of these different copies look and then I'll show you some gameplay. Okay, so first up we're going to be playing a bit of Sega Rally, as you can see on the screen. Now, I'd never played this one before and I found it a lot of fun, to be honest. And it's not a very long game, it's an arcade port, so it's got very limited gameplay modes, but it is a lot of fun. So you could do a championship in which you have 3 courses. You have an easy mode, you have a medium mode, and you have a difficult mode, and those 3 modes are 3 different courses. You can also pick from lots of cars too, which is a fun little detail. Now I think the graphics hold up pretty well for the kind of 3D that it is. As you can see, it's that kind of pixelated 3D, but I think it works pretty well. I think it works a lot better than it being really boxy, and it runs pretty smoothly too. Drifting around the corners is really fun, and you occasionally jump over bumps, and yeah, it's got a lot of really nice effects to it, and it definitely feels like you're actually driving a car, especially if you're driving in first person mode. I did find the audio sometimes got a little bit grating. Obviously with the sound of the engine, it sounds very drony, it doesn't sound realistic, but again, that's kind of a sign of the times, so it's not really that much of a problem. You can also play a third person mode too, which I actually much prefer, as I find it just way easier to drive that way. I find in first person I kind of feel a little bit dizzy and sick. But overall I really enjoyed it. I found it a pretty difficult game. I actually couldn't manage to complete the game, so yeah, it's definitely very difficult, but I think if you chip away at it, you'll probably get there eventually, and I'm not very good at racing games anyway, so that's probably why. You can find this game for pretty cheap these days, so keep an eye out for it, and you can pick up a good copy that's boxed and in pretty good condition for not too bad a price. So it's definitely one to get for your Saturn collection. So now we go on to the first Panzer Dragoon. Now I really enjoyed this game. It's a kind of rail shooter, and it's a fantasy world with dragons and monsters and kind of some weird technology going on. It's got a really interesting aesthetic. It's kind of almost Final Fantasy-esque in my opinion. That's kind of how I would describe its aesthetic. So as you can see, it's got a really long intro. It's very cool though, and yeah, I think it looks pretty great for its age. It's held up pretty well, but it is a very long intro, but luckily you can skip it if you want to. I actually didn't get very far on this game at all. I don't think I got past episode 1. I found it quite tricky, especially the boss that's towards the end on the boat, which you will probably see in a little bit. But yeah, I think it's pretty fun otherwise. It's pretty accurate as a shooter, even though it's technically not with guns or anything. But yeah, it's a fun game, and I do recommend getting it. I'm not sure how much they cost. I know the Panzer Dragoon series is quite pricey, but definitely other games are more expensive than others. There's obviously quite a few of the games on the Saturn too, so I think there's 1, 2 and Saga. I have no idea what the storyline is like and if you have to play them in order or not, but obviously they will get better as they go along as far as gameplay, I think, and they become a bit more free roamy instead of just shooting on rails. So yeah, and definitely give the other ones a go as well at some point. I do think it's worth picking up this game. It's quite unique. I don't think I've played a game that's quite like it. Obviously there's lots of rail shooters, but with the kind of aesthetic that it has and the style of gameplay, and I don't think there's anything quite like it, so it's a fairly unique game. So it's definitely one to play and experience. The music is pretty cool too. So next up we have Nights into Dreams, and this was probably one of the favourites that I picked out of these 4 games. Really enjoyed it. I think it's really unique. It's got a really different style. I've no idea what's going on in it, and it took me ages to actually get it right and understand the gameplay, but once you do, it's not too difficult a game. Basically, you can choose between these two characters, and whichever character you choose really varies on which world you get. One of them's more foresty and the other one's a bit more mountainous. Now, the aim of the game is you collect these blue orbs. I don't know what they're called exactly, but basically you fly through the sky and you collect them, and then you go up against these other weird machiney looking things and you basically defeat them, and you have to do it within the allotted time. And you've got all these rings that you can fly through which give you all the points. You can definitely tell that the Sonic team created this. There's definitely so much about it that although it doesn't look like Sonic, it definitely plays like Sonic and has a lot of elements that feel very, very similar to it if you are a fan of Sonic. I really enjoy the flying through the sky element of the gameplay, the simple mechanics of going through a world and collecting items that give you points and running through rings. I think sometimes with AAA games you really miss that sort of very traditional gamified gameplay, if that makes sense, that very arcade style of collecting points and having a high score. And sometimes it's nice to go back to that kind of gameplay. It reminds me a lot of childhood. In terms of difficulty, once I figured out how to play the game, it wasn't too difficult, though I didn't get too far in the game. I got to the first boss, which as you can see is really, really colourful and very spectacular. I really enjoyed the aesthetics of this game, but yeah, it wasn't too difficult, though I couldn't figure out how to defeat this boss, but hopefully I'll go back to it after doing a little bit of reading and figure it out. Yeah, overall, really enjoyed it, and I think I will try and go back and complete it at some point, and probably play the Christmas one as well. Last but not least, we have one of my absolute favourite fighting games, which is Virtua Fighter. Now, I did say originally I was going to be playing Virtua Fighter 1. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a bit too scratched and just couldn't get it to work. So we're playing Virtua Fighter 2, which actually is probably the better game, obviously because it's a bit updated, the graphics are a bit better, there's a little bit more gameplay in there as well and a few different modes. Now, if you've played Shimmy, then you probably recognise the fighting style. I believe it was really heavily influenced by Virtua Fighter and was basically meant to be a real-life Virtua Fighter game, a kind of life simulator, and that's kind of where the origins of the game came from, and you can definitely feel it when you play this game. I really love all the characters. I think what I enjoy most about this is a bit more realistic than some other fighting games. There's no kind of hat tricks or anything. You are just using your fists and your legs to fight. It's definitely one of the easier ones to button mash with, which is probably why I enjoy this game most. But yeah, I really enjoy a lot of the characters, and Pi is probably my favourite to play with. She's got some very strong leg attacks, and yeah, she's definitely the one that I prefer playing with most and that I definitely gelled with most with her fighting style. Probably one of the best things about Virtua Fighter is that when you're fighting it's so detailed, even for the old, very old blocky style that it has. As you're fighting you can see random bits of clothing falling off, so I think at one point Pi's hat falls off and yeah, all sorts of things, and it's very fun and definitely a lot more detailed than some other games of its era, which it's obviously very well known for. The scenery is also awesome as well, it's very atmospheric, and yeah, even though it does look very dated, you can obviously see underneath the platforms and you can tell that the background is static, but other than that I think it holds up really well, and I really enjoy the little bios that it has about each character. If you play until the end of Virtua Fighter, you get to basically try to defeat the last character, which I'm actually not sure what it's called, but it's basically this silver person. I find it really hard. I don't think I've ever managed to defeat them, but I have played through all characters and all of the modes, and I've played all of the Virtua Fighter games. I think Virtua Fighter 2 and 3 are classics just for that reason. Virtua Fighter 1 is fun, but it obviously is very old and yeah, it feels a little bit clunky and it looks so blocky and everything's all polygons, so it's not my favourite, but it's obviously really nice to see how a game develops over time. And I really like the Virtua Fighter series and where it's gone in the modern day too. Now that really concludes the video. Thank you so much for coming along and watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what games you think I should pick up for the Saturn, which were your favourites. Do you have any good memories of the Sega Saturn? Have you ever played on it before? Let me know, because I enjoy reading all your guys' experiences. But in the meantime, follow me on social media so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on, and when the next videos will go live, I'll leave all the links down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!